If you are a fighter, Modelo is your reward. So listen close. You are strong. You are fearless. You are a fighter. And every last drop of this rich golden Modelo is yours. So raise it up high, because you've earned it. Modelo, the mark of a fighter. Drink responsibly. Beer imported by Crown Imports, Chicago, Illinois.
Avoiding your unfinished home projects because you're not sure where to start? Thumbtack knows homes, so you don't have to. Don't know the difference between matte paint finish and satin? Or what that clunking sound from your dryer is? With Thumbtack, you don't have to be a home pro. You just have to hire one. You can hire top-rated pros, see price estimates, and read reviews, all on the app. Download today.
What is up, Cal fans? Welcome back to another episode of the California Golden Bearcast, a proud partner of the Blue Wire Podcast Network. It is big game week, and I am alongside Rob. As always, we have a special guest with us today who I couldn't be more excited to have on the podcast. So a huge welcome to Trevor Guyton. Trevor, welcome to the Bearcast.
Thank you, Andy and Rob. Appreciate it.
Well, we're stoked to have you here. Very excited to run through, I think, our era, right, Rob? Like, this is our era.
This is our era,
football.
Yep.
And when I worked with the team, my glorious 1 year with the team, as an equipment manager, MVP, only person to miss their plane to the bowl game. Fun fact, Trevor, I don't know if you knew that one.
Didn't hear that one.
Sad it's recorded and on the air, but here we are. No, so excited to have you here. So, Rob, let's do a quick rundown of Trevor's background.
All right. So we got Trevor Guyton here, born January 9th, 1990, four-star recruit in the 2008 class and a super prep All-American choice as a senior in that class. Played in the final 7 games of 2008, his true freshman year, with 3 tackles, 2 in the big game. And we have him on during big game week. In 2009, played in all 11 games with 13 tackles, 4 tackles for loss, 1 sack, and 1 fumble recovery. 2010, played in all 11, started the last 4, finished 3rd in tackles for loss and sacks behind Michael Kendricks and Cam Jordan. And for people who can't see, he has those jerseys right behind him in the shot that we're looking at, which is pretty cool. Also finished 2nd in tackles on the defensive line behind Cam Jordan. Earned the team's Bob Tessier Award as the most improved defensive lineman. In 2011, second-team All-Pac-12 selection, led the team with 6 sacks, and 2nd in tackles for loss with 12. Co-led the team with 2 forced fumbles and 2 fumble recoveries, 46 tackles for the lead amongst the team's defensive linemen. Also a special moment, I wanted to ask him about this too, that they noted on Cal Bears was he wore number 6 against Washington State to honor his former high school teammate and Washington State player Corey McKay, who was paralyzed in a 2009 car accident. And then finished his Cal career with 42 games played, 17 starts, 92 tackles, 24 and a half tackles for loss, 11 sacks, I believe, 3 forced fumbles, 2 fumble recoveries, including 1 for a touchdown in 2011 in the season opener against Fresno State. Was drafted in the 7th round by the Vikings in 2012 and was a part of the NFL Combine in 2012. Recorded an 8'9" broad jump. Oh my God, my knees broke just reading that. 5.07 in the 40-yard dash and a 7.45 3-cone drill. Andy, those are athletic feats that you and I can only dream of. And even if we dreamt of it, we would tear our ACLs in the dream.
Also, Trevor played with the Saskatchewan Roughriders in 2014, CFL, and then coached at USC in 2018. Trevor, we talked about that, but what were you doing for USC in 2018?
I was a defensive line graduate assistant.
Oh, nice.
So I was coaching the D line.
Who was head coach?
It was Clay Helton, and I don't know if you guys know Austin Clark. I'm assuming you do.
Yeah.
But he's been one of my best friends since college, and he started out GAing for Coach Pendergast down there, and then when he took the Illinois D line job, between he and Clancy, they had just kind of decided I was the guy for the job. I was working construction at the time. And so, they called me up, told me that they thought I should do it. I went down there and interviewed and got it, and, was down there for the season. Coaching is coaching, and, long story short, ended up kind of having the opportunity pulled from under my feet. and so I only was there one season, but I really did. I had a great time and coached some really great players down there. Two guys still playing right now, Jay Tufele and Brandon Peely, who's with the Seahawks doing really well right now. Um, but yeah, I had a good time down there. I've been coaching high school football the last 3 seasons out here in Washington. That's I've been coaching, but these next 2 seasons at least, I told the coaching staff the other week that I'm gonna not coach the next 2 seasons.
Wow. Taking is there any significance to the 2 seasons versus just taking
I
1
you
season?
know, I'm a big outdoorsman. I'm an avid hunter and fisherman, and I've always been an outdoorsman, and my conflict of my life passions has always been football and hunting at the same season. And I don't know if you guys can see, I got my dog right here, but he's a pointer, and so we go out hunting for birds and stuff like that. And the season football it's just such a huge time commitment that I haven't been able to get him out, and he's in his prime. And I'd like to just do right by my dog and get him out into the field a lot more than he's been.
I love that. I love that. When we were looking at houses, we were like, "Look at this backyard. This would be great for Buster." And then we looked at each other. We're like, "Wait, are we optimizing for our dog in one of our biggest life decisions?" No, that's amazing. I was gonna say fishing. I mean, JW likes to fish. We hear it all the time. That's all he does in the off season. Is reportedly. Well, I don't know about all he does, but
Well, I
he's,
mean,
he's
it's a great pastime.
yeah. That's hard to find a better place than where you are up in the Pacific Northwest
Oh
for
yeah,
that.
for
So
sure. I mean, it's an outdoorsman's wonderland.
so cool. Well, as I said, Trevor, we're stoked to have you here. I'd love to hear just like what brought you to Cal, a little bit of that journey, and then maybe like some of the stories from your early days, freshman, sophomore year, and what that was like.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I mean, I guess, I'll just kind of talk about my high school, recruiting experience and all that stuff, and then get to Cal. I mean, football was always my favorite sport. I grew up playing basketball. I was a lot bigger than the other kids my age, so I wasn't really playing pee wee or anything like that. But and I'm born and raised in Philly. Grew up there. We moved to Washington when I was 13 or 14, and I think I started playing football in 8th grade, and really took a liking to it, and kept growing the way I did. And so I wasn't the best student in junior high and high school, and so in my junior high was like 7th grade through 9th grade. So my freshman year I was still in junior high, and so I was still kind of messing around in school. And so when I got to high school, I was academically ineligible. So I didn't even get to play like on the high school team my sophomore year. But that sophomore year, we did a football camp at Washington State. And this is when I think Bill Doble was still there. And, we went as a team to Washington. I went to Redmond High School here in Washington. And I went with the team, was practicing with the team. The Wazoo coaches kind of pulled me from playing with my team and put me with the recruited players like seniors and stuff like that they were kind of considering. And by the end of the football camp, I had won the defensive MVP. And then right before we got on the bus to head back to Seattle, Doba and the coaches there sat me down and offered me a scholarship to Wazoo. So
Wow.
I got my first, my high school recruiting experience isn't, it's kind of atypical because I got my first offer before I ever played a down of high school football.
Wow.
Um, and so, that was going into my junior year. My junior year, I ended up, doing what I should have done. And then all the other kind of, offers started coming through. Um, and at that time, I was Cal was my favorite team that I was watching play every weekend. They had Rodgers all through. I think my senior year they had it was when Riley lost that game in Oregon State. Uh, forget what you yeah.
Thanks for bringing that one up.
Well, I also don't want to necessarily put it on Riley. Kev's my guy. I love him. But that was when I was still in high school, and they had Marshawn Lynch, they had Robert Jordan, and Deshaun, and they just Lavelle Hawkins. I mean, Deku. They had so many exciting players, and the energy was on. It was just. I
Yep.
was just a big fan of Cal football and what they were doing. They had Brandon Mebane, more importantly, and so as I was looking into where I wanted to go, I wanted to see what guys were coming out of places, and Mebane was that guy coming out. So I knew they put out great college football players. I knew they put out great D linemen. Um, and they were exciting, and I wanted to get the hell out of Washington. So I knew I wasn't going to Washington. I knew I wasn't going to UW. I entertained Wazoo just because they were the first people to kind of recognize me. But when I, Cal and USC had a camp at the same time, and they both wanted me to go, and I was like, you know what, like I don't really want to go to USC. I don't want to get caught up in their stables or whatever it is. Like, and I'm not even gonna say anything. But I was
Love
like,
it.
I do want to go to Cal. And so I went did Cal's camp. They didn't even have me do the actual camp. I just talked with Coach Delgado. He put me through like a workout, just doing a bunch of drills and stuff like that. And then they offered me, and I had a great time there. I knew it was a great school. I knew I loved the weather, the Bay Area in general. That was my first time going to California, and I fell in love with Berkeley. I knew it was a place that I wanted to be, and I got home maybe, 2 or 3 days later, I called them and just committed. So I think I was the second commit my year next to Bo Sweeney.
Nice.
But
Love it.
and I had Bo come up when we were still in seniors in high school, and he came up and partied with me at my place. I threw a little. My parents may not know this, but I threw a little party out there. But he's my guy too. But yeah, that was my kind of recruiting experience and why I chose Cal.
Trevor, it just occurred to me because uh, Tosh was coaching when I was with the team in 2009. So was Tosh a part of your recruitment?
He was my recruitment. I mean,
Okay.
I didn't. Coach Delgado was the coach that I had originally committed to, and then that year I think he went to Louisville. But it's not like I was committed to Coach Delgado. Like I wanted to go to Cal, and Loop was there though because he was the GA before he was the D line coach.
Yep.
And so I had already been, tight with Luke even before he was the D line coach. And then, he just kind of came back up, kind of re-recruited me and made sure that I wasn't going anywhere, and I wasn't anyway. Um, but I mean it couldn't have been the best. It couldn't have been a better decision. I mean, I really do attribute having Coach Loop as my coach and to why I got to the league in the first place. Like the level of excellence that he held us to as a D line. If I didn't have that coaching, I wouldn't have got there. And also, I was just so lucky to play with such incredible players and against such incredible players that's really what elevated my game too. I mean, coming in and having to play behind Tyson and Cam, like I played behind two first rounders my time at Cal, so I was scratching and clawing to get any bit of action on the field that I could. And like I started out redshirting my freshman year, and I hated it. I hated practicing and not playing. And I was like, and we had talked, and it was like, I was kind of right on the cusp, and we were getting into, 4 or 5 games where I hadn't played. And I'm like, dude, if I'm gonna play, then play me, because I don't want to, I don't want to burn my whole freshman year on on getting in only a couple times. And so, but playing my freshman year was invaluable, experience. But the time that I was on scout team, I was giving looks to Alex Mack every rep, and that guy, was never taking a play off. So I couldn't, I certainly wouldn't take any plays off during scout team looks and stuff like that. Um, and they in football, it's a cliche, iron sharpens iron, but it really does take playing against the elite players to become an elite player.
I
Yeah,
have a question here for Trevor, just based on that, thing you just talked about. Like, knowing how college football now works, with the transfer portal and all of that stuff, like how if you were to place yourself into a situation now, not at Cal or per se,
Yeah.
and you're one of those guys you're sitting right there behind two of those top guys and you're not getting that playing time, like how much, I guess, uh is the transfer portal would be enticing to you as a player, not getting that playing time and then seeing if there's other opportunities out there for you, versus how you did it and you kind of bid your time, worked behind these guys, and knew that you were going to get your opportunity at some point, and just that decision making process.
I mean, it's hard to speculate on that type of stuff. Like, I'm a loyal person, and I'm really glad that I was able I was privileged enough to be able to play my whole career at Cal and not have to go anywhere else or anything like that. But given the current landscape, I mean, it would be silly to say that you weren't going to go where the money was at, right? Like if you got a chance to be making, a couple 100,000 to 1 million, whatever kids are getting these days,
Yeah.
like, yeah, I'm not gonna turn that down to sit behind 2 guys who are playing ahead of me. Um, but that's also, I don't know, I'm very, in that sense, I've always been a confident person, and I always had confidence that I could play with anybody. So, you know, I knew that I had to elevate my game to be able to get on the field, but there was no doubt in my mind that I was a better player than a lot of the guys I was playing with too, you know. And so I don't know. It's tough to say, but money's money, and if you're a 18-year-old kid and you can either play behind 2 first-round draft picks or get a couple 100,000 to go play somewhere where they're going to play you right now, I mean, it's a pretty simple choice.
Yeah, I mean, there's not a lot of guys that committed just to the university despite a coaching change, right? So, Trevor's one of the few for us.
yeah, that's it's actually Trevor. I think like based on your experience, I so much and probably my millennial millennial brain, I was like, oh, challenging yourself, having that confidence, pushing through, and then going up against that level of talent was obviously something that uh, uh, helped your development. And does that pull away from people's development if they're jumping? But then, I mean, I think you made a really good point.
I
I have,
mean, everybody has the circumstances that you get, and it takes a lot of luck to be successful in football or whatever you do. You have to have a certain amount of things that just go well for you, and you really, like, as much as you get to choose who you play for, you don't really get to choose the type of relationship that you have with a coach, or how things go. Whether I was lucky enough to never really deal with any injuries that set me back like that. I definitely got banged up, and you know a whole lot of wear and tear on my body. But as far as, like, corrective season ending surgeries or anything like that, I didn't get those setbacks. I didn't get stuck with a coach who wasn't trying to be his absolute best. I got a guy who was on the up and coming, who was trying to make a name for himself, and you see where Coach Loop is at right now, and it's not surprising to me at all that he's there, because I saw how driven he was to be the best possible coach he could be when he was coaching me, you know? And we had a really special relationship. I was the first player to commit to him. I was, we both our time at Cal was the same time. After my senior year, he left for UW. So um, I like he and I we grew up together at Cal, and again, I'm he was an incredible coach, and the unity that he kind of preached and cultivated in our D line was really special. Because especially as a D line, you really are you if you're not together, then the defense isn't together, and you got to operate as a unit, and it takes a lot of brotherhood and to be a successful team. Like you can have good players, but if all the guys on the D line aren't kind of operating in unison, then nobody's really eating the way they should.
If you are a fighter, Modelo is your reward. So listen close. You are strong, you are fearless, you are a fighter. And every last drop of this rich golden Modelo is yours. So raise it up high, because you've earned it. Modelo, the mark of a fighter. Drink responsibly. Beer imported by Crown Imports, Chicago, Illinois.
Avoiding your unfinished home projects because you're not sure where to start? Thumbtack knows homes, so you don't have to. Don't know the difference between matte paint finish and satin? Or what that clunking sound from your dryer is? With Thumbtack, you don't have to be a home pro. You just have to hire one. You can hire top-rated pros, see price estimates, and read reviews, all on the app. Download today.
Wow. Yeah. I love that. I always felt like, as an observer in the 2009 season, to seeing the O line, and then also the way that they interacted with Kevin, like Kevin Riley, there
Mhm.
was like an actual, like, it felt like that brotherhood to me, and that season being like, pretty successful season. I don't know, like 8-9 win, like good bowl game. Like, we'd take that right now.
Yeah, man.
But yeah, I think that's an incredible call out about, it's almost like a selflessness and understanding, like coming together and saying, hey, we gotta look at this as a group and not as an individual, and elevate everybody. So that's so
Yeah.
cool. I think, like, thinking to your experience, I'd love to hear your overall thoughts, like, playing for Tedford. He obviously had his Hall of Fame ceremony this season. So did Alex Mack.
Mhm.
So, just shining the light on your relationship with Alex Mack, and then also with Coach Tedford, and um, what's it been for you following Tedford as he's moved on from Cal, and that experience.
Yeah, I mean, I said earlier, but I mean, I love Teddy with everything I got. I mean, he helped raise me. His sons are I'm close friends with his son. I was roommate with Quinn Tedford my whole time in college, or 3 of the 4 years I was in college. And I went to Teddy's lake house in the summers and all that type of stuff. Like, I mean, he's an incredible guy, and he's a type of coach that you do want to play for, and you look at what he's done at Cal, and it really is incredibly special, what he was able to do, and it's and Fresno State too. I mean, you can't forget Fresno State when you're talking about Teddy. Um, so yeah, I mean, he was great. I mean, you know, there's everybody's always got whatever, you know, nobody's perfect. But I wouldn't have changed it for anything.
Well, going back to sort of, the time of week that it is, being big game week, I want to get your thoughts. Like, you played in, I think, was it 3 big games?
I mean, I played in four.
Played in
Um,
4?
Actually, no, no, no. I played in three. I suited for one in 29 2009. That was at Stanford, and I was ready to play, but I was playing behind Tyson, and Tyson did not come out that entire game. And there was one time I'm almost certain that game actually Luke sent me in and Tice waved me off.
That's amazing.
What do you do as a player walking onto the field then? You're walking on the player, you're telling Tyson like
Well, it's
and he
Tice,
just waves
you
you off.
know.
Are you just like what do you look back
I
at
mean,
coach? You look back at Tyson?
I didn't even have to look back at Luke. If Tice is waving me off, then he's waving me off. I'm not gonna argue with him, and I'm not gonna, tell him to get. I'm not gonna get a 12th man penalty. I just got my ass off the field, Um, but no, and we won that game. So I was more, I was more excited about the win than I was down about not getting any time on the field. Because again, like Tice is Tice, and he was an absolute beast, and so it's not like I was going to be the better option on the field than he was.
So
Fair enough.
that does mean, Trevor, I think that then I hate to even say this, but like every other big game there on after was a loss.
So yeah, in my career, we were 2-2. We won the first two and then lost the second two.
Okay.
Yeah. Um, my my senior year, um, I there was a big dog pile, and I ended up getting, Stanford has that awful grass. I don't know if they still do, but it was like this like extra thick and long grass that week the coaches kept talking about, and they had our cleats changed from like the molded cleats to these like screw in like 3/4 inch cleats. Like anyway, there ended up being a big dog pile, and I took a cleat through my shin,
Oh
and it
my
was like
God.
probably a 3-inch gash. Like it was wide open. I had like meat hanging out and everything. Um, and so I got
no.
yeah, it was crazy. You could even see like like the fat in my shin. It looked like kind of salmon roe or like fish eggs hanging out of my leg.
Oh
And I
my
was like,
god.
"Ugh," but they took me back. They took me back to the locker room or the training room, stitched me back up and wrapped it up, and I came back out and played. And the first play that I came back in on, there was like this one specific package where I would be on a wide nine, and if it was that wide nine against a certain formation, then I was going to need to drop into coverage. So that situation was that play happened the first play I came back in from getting stitched up on my calf, and I ended up it was like they dumped it off to the tight end run in front of me. I think it might have been Ertz. I don't know who, or it was one of their good tight ends from our time there, and I just leveled him, and so I was 1 for 1 in coverage defended.
Damn, I love that story. That's
That's great.
incredible. That is incredible. You have a favorite? I mean, that's kind of a favorite memory from the big game. Is there maybe as we zoom out a little bit, is there any like particular memory from Cal football that stands out? And then any other stories that you feel like uh really resonated with you that maybe aren't as well known as or to the general public?
Um, well, I mean, from the big game, my freshman year when we won at Cal at Memorial Stadium, um, it was just such a cool experience to win that game and see, guys get. I think they picked Mike Kendricks up and kind of carried him around, and the fans rushed the field, and being part of that type of stuff was always so cool. Just in general, one of my favorite memories of playing college football is just coming through the north tunnel of Memorial Stadium when the band is drumming, and it's our kind of entrance out there. Like that just always sent chills through me. And um Memorial Stadium's such a beautiful place to play ball and call home. So that was great. I think the first game that I was like part of the team, we played Michigan State at home for like a Friday night game, and that was just lit. The stadium was packed, and they were talking about how, oh, this is a Big 12 team. They're going to try to run 21% personnel and run it down your throat. and we just went out there, and I didn't even play that game, but we beat them pretty good. And that was, a fun experience to just be part of college football for the first time. And it's like, it was just really cool. I mean, there's a ton of different, great memories from playing ball. I mean, I don't really have any bad memories from being out there. I mean, um, my my senior year, the last game against Texas in the Holiday Bowl. Um, I mean, I got really, I don't, I was, you probably can't curse on this, but I got messed up that game. I ended up spending 5 nights in the hospital in San Diego after that game.
Wow.
And I mean, and that, like, in hindsight, um, that really set me back as far as my draft stock and, like, actually being able to have a good opportunity to get to the league and play. So that, that's kind of a downer. My senior year in general, I I beat the shit out of my body that year. I had a dislocated toe against Oregon State. I ended up tearing a tendon in my wrist against ASU that I didn't get fixed for a while. That, you know, made mobility in my wrist really painful. So I mean, I like my senior year. I went so hard to do everything that I could to get to the league that, by the time I actually got there, my body was a shell of what it should have been. And so, I was kind of like, I don't know, everybody gets their opportunity to play ball, whatever they end up doing. But, I do wish that I went into the NFL with a more uh, healthy body.
You feel like that is that a common? You think is that
I
like
mean,
in
it's
your
football.
yeah?
I mean, everybody's hurt, everybody's banged up, and you gotta make it happen, and if you don't, good luck blaming it on injuries. There's plenty of guys who had a lot worse injuries than I did that, did just fine. So, I mean, you do what you work with what you got, and if it works out, then great. If it doesn't, you got to find your way elsewhere. And so, it was never something that really beat me up too bad. Not having a successful pro career, like, I went to Canada, and played a year there, and I loved it, and I balled out. I did really well, but, I just realized that, I wasn't trying to be the greatest player I could be anymore, and I never wanted to be the guy who kept playing just because it's all he knew. Playing ball is something that I absolutely love and still have a passion for, but it was never the only thing I had going for me. And so I'd always made an agreement with the game that, the game's been good to me and I'm going to do right by the game and, give it everything that I got. And then the second that I feel like I'm half stepping it, I'm just gonna step out because I'm not gonna disrespect the game by doing it when my heart's not in it. And so I stayed true to that kind of outlook and just kind of stepped away once I realized that I was ready for something new. And it would have been great to make more money playing in the league, but I wasn't gonna get rich playing in the CFL, and I wasn't necessarily looking to grind to get back to the league. So I'm like, okay, well, what are we doing? Are you just gonna keep playing to keep playing, or are you gonna try to go be great in something else?
Well, been lucky enough to have Coach Rivera on the podcast twice this season, and he has hammered that point home. I think very, very well, which is 99% of these guys aren't going to end up. 99% of college football players aren't going to end up in the NFL, and so there's a really, real big importance into figuring out what that's going to be, and then leveraging hopefully a Cal degree to give you a leg up along the way. So. I think huge credit to you for recognizing, that, hey, I'm sure would be a huge physical toll in addition to everything else of just kind of trying to continue to make it happen. And then I can't imagine. I know that a lot of this is like a not talked about enough topic. I work with a former major leaguer, and he brought this up with Scott Schebler mentioned this, how hard it was to transition once his baseball career was done. And it's like doing something that you love for your entire life. And then, if you're a surgeon, you're doing that your entire life. And then someone comes to you and says, you can't do that anymore. And you're like, all right, I got to figure out, what do I do? Uh, it
Yeah, I mean, a lot of guys have identity crisis, once the game ends, and for good reason. I wasn't necessarily, one of those people who was trying to find who I was not playing anymore. I mean, it's still part of who I am. A lot of times the way I think about stuff, like, I still realize that I see through things through like a football player's lens and like approach to things, but obviously there's a lot of I was telling one of my coworkers at my company now, is like, there's shit you say in a football locker room or just a sports environment in general, where nobody's got like the objective is to get better now, and you need to deliver information and communication in that same form, and then in a corporate setting you have to sugarcoat a lot of stuff, and kind of tiptoe around how you do your delivery. In football, as a player at least, uh, you know, there's a lot of delivery that you don't have to worry about. You could just say what you need to say and cut to the chase. Um,
yeah, from personal experience, I can say as on the equipment staff, I do understand that. All right. Well, that's I think as good as of a transition as any. Trevor, like you already mentioned the outdoors piece. Love that. Love that you're still coaching, giving back to young men. I think that's a huge, really important thing to be doing. So props to you for that. Biggest question for me would be like, how has football kind of helped you in your life, in your professional career, or maybe even Cal in general? And just would love to hear about that.
yeah, I mean, you know, a lot of my best friends in life are from my time in Cal. Um, they're Mike Kendricks and Cam and all these guys. It's hard to name everybody, but um, they're the people who you rely on when stuff gets hard, and you got to talk to somebody, and you can rely on them because you could on the field, and you've put that blood, sweat, and tears, and frustrations and all that stuff. You go through that stuff together as young men growing into trying to be the men that you want to be, and holding guys up to a higher standard than sometimes they hold themselves. And it really is a lifelong process that you go with these guys that you call brothers from a team. And so, as far as Cal goes, I don't think there's a better place. At least there wasn't. I can't imagine one for me, of finding the people who, I continue to surround myself with. Um, from a football perspective, I think it's always football always gave me a purpose and a vision and something to aspire to. I think in general, I've always been a craftsman, whether it's carpentry or football or any type. I like to cook. Whatever it is, I like to create and make things and master my craft. And from an early age, I was able to recognize that football was this gift that I had. I was a natural, and it came naturally to me, the mentality and the physicality and just the talent. And a bunch of us guys at Cal, we called it GGT, God given talent. And I think that was one of the things about a lot of the Cal players that we had, that was just the intrinsic ability to play ball. I mean, you look at all the guys that came out, and it's like you don't really know how to pinpoint it, but so many guys were just out there balling, whether it's Marv or Keenan or, Cam or Mike or, you know, Sean Katu. I mean, all these guys, like literally, like I said, everybody that we played and started with pretty much, went to the league. And it's just that's a part of it, having that natural ability, but the most important thing is just the craftsmanship of it and taking pride in, the excellence of the work that you're doing. And that was something that I always appreciated about football. And I try to continue to apply to anything that I, apply myself to now is like, if I make my living as a as a technical recruiter, well then I'm trying to be a craftsman at it and I, am dialing in my skills on a daily basis to be as successful in it as I can.
Yeah. Uh, Trevor, I mean, I think there's something that's so cool about that approach. My biggest curiosity is within, that group that you mentioned. Do you feel like is that craftsmanship? You've mentioned it as a theme that was something that you sort of had within you. Do you also feel like it was allowed to be kind of fostered or brought along? And do you feel like anyone else that you played with, all of the folks that you just mentioned, right? Like,
Yeah, I
uh,
mean, it's because more than anything, like, people are always talking about, oh, well, sure, it's a physical game, but it's more mental. But, like when you live your life as a football player, you have to, you get outside of just the day to day and you start, applying philosophy to how you want your game to go and how you structure, how you prepare and how you practice and the way you work, Um, everybody's got to kind of find that out for themselves and what their philosophy is. But you also, you don't have to reinvent the wheel. You can see what guys who have seen success are doing, and you can take a lot out of their page. And I think there's not a coach out in the world who's going to tell you that attention to detail doesn't matter. You know, and for me, I knew I was gifted with the game and the ability to just play ball and have a knack for getting there. But I did also know that I wasn't either. I also wasn't the biggest, strongest, or the fastest. Like I'm adequate as far as my contemporary, football peers. I'm adequate in all of those things, but I was never, exceptional in any one of those categories either. So you know, kind of straddled the borderline of a tweener in a lot of ways. And I knew that, no matter how many weights I ever lifted, I wasn't going to be the strongest guy on the field. But I did also know that if I dial my technique in and how I'm striking somebody, then there's no way that they're going to be able to beat me one on one if I'm doing everything that I need to do, right? So it's like, while a lot of guys were living in the gym, I was like, okay, well, I'll do what I need to do in the gym, but I'm never going to be a workout warrior. I'm just going to put more practice on in the field and with my hands and with my feet to make sure that when we go toe to toe, I'm still winning these reps. Because that was the way I knew I could get myself on the field. And another thing that I can't go without mention is a no loaf mentality that Coach Luke definitely instilled in us as a defensive line. I mean, if you look at a lot of I'd say probably a third of the plays that I ever made as a football player in general were just off pure effort alone. I mean, I probably the biggest thing that I could take pride in is looking at my tape and not seeing a loaf and not seeing me give up on a play that I shouldn't have because there's a lot of plays that other guys should have made that I ended up getting credited with the tackle,
yeah.
just because I got my ass to that ball.
Wow. I love that. Uh, truly, truly love hearing you walk through that and how impressive it is to think about that process. And also to look at an equation and understand what you can control, and being willing to go all in on that and build it into a competitive differentiator. Like,
Yeah, I
truly.
mean, I remember it was about my sophomore year where, I played as a freshman, I played a little bit more as a sophomore, and I knew I was I knew I was a really good football player, but I also could kind of see the writing on the wall in the way that I was approaching the game where I was just doing what I needed to do. And then I had to have you have to have conversations with yourself on, reality and give yourself a reality check. I was like, okay, well, realistically, if I do what I'm doing right now, then I'll finish up my football career, and then that's it. And I was like, okay, well, are you okay with not being a football player right now? And the answer to me was no. And I was okay, well, then I need to go above and beyond and really get my, lock in and get my stuff together to make sure that I afford myself the opportunity to keep playing, and so that sophomore year I really made the decision to get to the NFL, you know, um, and so if you don't have those constant and daily gut checks with yourself and kind of status reports on where you're really landing, like you're just not gonna get there, and you see it so many times with guys who they get used to just being on the team and that's the life they live, and they people want to be around them because they're a part of a big football program, and they just think that's what life is going to be, and it's like that life ends the second you're off the team and you're not on another one. um and so not that I was ever really worried about that stuff, but just me personally, like, I knew I wanted to keep playing ball, and so I really locked in after my sophomore year and made the commitment to be a great football player instead of a really good one.
Trevor, I'm really glad that you are in charge of like helping and being around like a football program right now. I know you're taking a break. I know you're going hunting for 2 seasons, but man, how lucky are those? Like, we are so lucky that you are taking that time and doing that beyond your day to day, and the world's a better place for it. So I absolutely love hearing you talk about that. I think maybe one last little fun question. We asked Ron Rivera this, so we'll throw it your way too, Trev. But favorite restaurant if you were to go back to Berkeley, make a trip back. Like, what's the spot
Oh
that
boy.
you're hitting?
Oh boy.
There was a time where I was pretty addicted to Steve's Korean.
Oh no.
I mean, I don't know. It's not the only.
I just went back and it was delicious, but it kills Rob as a Korean person. It kills Rob.
Yeah.
It kills me. It kills me.
So don't take his reaction the wrong way. It's a perfectly good answer.
Once again, I understand what the meal is for where you are and like what it is. But like it kills me inside that like for a lot of these people it's like this is the closest like Korean food experience they're gonna get, and that's like what they associate to it, and I'm like it's better out there. I just need to show you the way.
I can assure you that I didn't attribute it to being the best Korean food I've ever had. But, as a college kid, I was definitely hanging around the Asian ghetto a good amount.
Totally understand. Understand.
The spot on Telegraph, it was kind of like a deli store, and they had like a chicken sandwich that I would get a good amount.
I remember that spot. The like off the Telegraph in Durant. Oh my gosh, it was the deli, right? We go there all the time.
Was it Sam's?
Sam's, yeah.
I went there a lot. Shout out to East Bay Vivarium in Berkeley. I went to East Bay Vivarium a lot of time. I used to go and just check it out. I don't know if you guys know what that is.
Yeah, it's right by 4th Street. It's like where all the snakes and all that stuff are.
It's in North Berkeley, kind of towards the pier. And I would go there all. I had a snake in college, and I would go. It was like a zoo. It was like a reptile zoo.
Yeah.
And I would go there just to kind of check everything out down there. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of places, but those are the two that are pop. I wasn't a big fan of Blondie's or Fat Slice. I couldn't stand their pizza.
It wasn't good.
No.
Let's be honest. Neither of them are. But for what it was what it was. That's the way Rob looks at Steve's.
Time and place. There's a time and place, but it doesn't need to be all the time. But there's a time and place. I understand it.
But but in college, that's also where I was cooking a lot in college, and I would throw some parties and make a bunch of wings and stuff like that. So that was, I would say, still my cooking was everybody was coming to my spot for wings, and after games we had D-line wine tasting. So I'd get
No
a bunch of
way.
jugs of Carlo Rossi, and folks would come through, and we would just sit out there and have a good time.
Oh my God.
I love that. All right. I think we'll end there. But Trevor, thank you so much for coming on the podcast, for bringing back all these great memories, and for being such a good example and mentor to young folks. It's been an absolute pleasure. So thank you so much for your time.
Yeah, man. Appreciate you guys.
All right, Rob, you want to take us home?
And and when you see Shane, tell him we got to link up sometime. Tell him to come down to New Orleans for the Jets Saints game.
All right. Well, I'll let him know when we talk to him tomorrow morning.
Yeah, full deal.
Yeah. Well, thanks for listening, folks. This has been the California Golden Bearcast. If you're listening to us, you already know where to find us. You can get all the written stuff over at rightforcalifornia.com. You can email us, goldenbearcast@gmail.com. You can tweet at us at goldenbearcast. And it's big game week, folks. See you down in Palo Alto. And Trevor, as always, go Bears.
Go Bears.
Go Bears.
If you are a fighter, Modelo is your reward. So listen close. You are strong, you are fearless, you are a fighter. And every last drop of this rich golden Modelo is yours. So raise it up high, because you've earned it. Modelo, the mark of a fighter. Drink responsibly. Beer imported by Crown Imports, Chicago, Illinois.